Today on the Being Whole podcast, I welcome Paul Getter. He is a friend first and a top-tier internet marketer second. Paul's internet marketing career began in desperation. He was recently fired and without prospects, and then he discovered the power of social media. Without any formal education in marketing, he committed himself to learn every aspect of social media marketing. Fast forward a few years, and he has now spent over $1 billion running ads and campaigns for his clients, is in the top 1% of ad spenders on Facebook, and has over 1 million followers on Instagram. Paul knows that platforms like Facebook and Instagram are just tools. They're not the objective. The objective is to get results for his clients. In this episode, we learn more about how Paul got where he is today. Plus, he shares advice for those of us who lack motivation or who are feeling like we are on a hamster wheel trying to find this coveted money-making passion for exploding our careers as entrepreneurs. Let's get this episode started. Okay, everyone, as promised, I am here with Paul Getter, and I am so excited about our conversation today because if you look Paul up in any way, I think the thing that shines through is just his happiness and his joy and the way that he wants to show up for other people. So Paul, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the ways that you really inspire other people.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's my privilege.
Well, okay, I know that people can go read about you and find you online, but I'd love for you to tell us kind of in your own words a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what really brought you to this space now where you're in this cool room with these awesome purple lights with all of the, if you're watching on YouTube, you have to go and look at his setup right now. It's totally
This is
awesome.
the nerd cave. This is the nerd cave.
I love it.
Yeah. So my name is Paul Getter, also known as the Internet Marketing Nerd, and hence, like I said, the Nerd Cave. And I've been blessed to work with a lot of amazing individuals, A-list celebrities, Fortune 500 companies, some of the top online entrepreneurs. And I guess you would say it didn't always go like this. I was just talking to my mom a couple months ago, and she's like, "Oh, do you remember living in the back of the car?" I'm like, "No, I don't remember that." And so I was brought up kind of a poor upbringing. I hate to use the word poor because I know a lot of people had it much worse than us, and I think I had a good family. My mother and father raised me all my life, and so I'm blessed in that. But I did have a tough upbringing, and I guess through a series of events, I found myself in a place of struggling, trying to, I did a lot of odd jobs, anything from McDonald's to delivering phone books, which probably some people don't even know what phone books are. Like, what are those? It was a book. When you think about phone books, they used to deliver a book to our house that had everybody's name, address, and phone number. Talk about no privacy.
Right? Honestly.
So, so I was delivering phone books, and one of my friends told me, they said, "Hey, you need to get on Facebook and stay in touch with me." They were going off to college, and remember I jumped on Facebook. I was like, this is for kids. I don't have time for this. You just play games on there. But I quickly found out that there was an opportunity for that to turn into a business. And that was before the days of everybody being an online entrepreneur, a digital marketer. This is when Facebook was in its very infancy stages. And so I quickly adopted that. And I guess you would say one thing led to another, and here I am today.
But I love just, even through your very brief introduction of yourself, you didn't just all of the sudden become this, it was through hard work. It was through trials and tribulations, and it was through coming through something, right? And it's interesting. A lot of times when you reach a certain level of success, you're in that space where you're going forward. And it does take somebody reminding you of like, hey, remember how far you've come, because you're so focused on your forward movement that sometimes we forget to reflect back and be like, oh my goodness, wow, yeah, I was in that position, or that did happen to me. And look at how I've gotten to this place that I have. And so I think that that's amazing that you have kind of gone through all of these different trajectories and different positions. And not of course you remember it when somebody brings it up, but it's more like, I guess the thing that strikes me when you're saying that is that wasn't the thing that defined you then. It was that was just one piece of your life. And then I'm continuing to go forward in other ways,
Yeah,
right?
and I think I still have a long way to go, and I want to
We all
continue
do.
to grow, and I got a vision, and but there is, I think, for any person that is a an individual that is driven, sometimes there's a disconnect of like, okay, this
Mhm.
is where I am,
Yeah.
this is where I want to be, and you're not there, and you find yourself frustrated and
Mhm.
anxious and stuff. But sometimes it's good to look back and say, well, I have came a long way from where I
Yeah,
used to be. And so it's patience and perseverance and
for
all of
sure.
those necessary attributes to get to the next level.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just as you said, sometimes when you're goal oriented or you have something in mind of where you want to be, then we're focused on that so much that we forget to kind of give ourselves grace for all of the things that we've done or all of the things that we've accomplished already.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and what I think is so okay. So yes, Facebook, when that all started, I remember that as well. Remember, you used to have just you have to had it, or you used to have an education address to even be on Facebook.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you kind of were on the beginning stages of this, wanting to help online entrepreneurs, wanting to help other people reach their dreams. So I'd love for you to just kind of tell us, like, what was that like for you in terms of understanding that this was a space that you could really flourish in and really go forward in?
Yeah. So a lot of times people ask me, how did you decide to become an entrepreneur? I'm like, I had bills to pay.
Right.
It was not one of these like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. But there was this upbringing and this mindset that, I wasn't waiting for somebody else to, pay my bills for me or to do the work for me. So I explored a lot of different options. So after my friend told me to jump online, I finally I gave in and set up a Facebook page. And one of the things that I noticed is, again, this is the very beginning
Mhm.
stages where I say this now, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, duh, everybody does that." But there was only like a few businesses that were setting up pages to represent their business.
Mm.
And I saw that. I was like, man, let me give it a shot. And so I set up a page for my church,
Mm.
putting information about our church and stuff. And I remember it was a couple weeks later, I went to church and there was this new family there. And I said, how'd you hear about us? And they said, oh, we saw you on Facebook.
That's awesome.
And and it was like, whoa, wow, these are like real people really here in front of me. And they came from that Facebook thing I did. And so it was a catalyst for everything else. I was like, okay, if this can do that, what can this do for a restaurant? What can this do for a realtor? What can this? And so I began connecting with local businesses and say, hey, there's an opportunity. And this was,
Hmm.
again, it was like the gold rush online, like, hey, get online and you got to do this. And so I was an early adopter of it, and I saw people, it worked, whether it's a chiropractor or a restaurant or whoever it was, it worked for their business. And then word of mouth, people just like, hey, put me on that Facebook thing, do that for me. And it quickly
Hmm.
evolved into a very lucrative little side hustle I was doing.
I think it's so interesting. Social media gets such a bad rap in so many different spaces, right? About how it can distract us from our purpose, or we numb out on it, or what have you. But if we look back to its origins and why it
Yeah.
started, it was about exactly what you're saying. It was about building those connections. It was
Yeah.
about bridging those gaps between the people who knew about, services or goods or businesses that existed, or people that could help them, and really trying to draw in those connections. And I think what's so cool about what you do is that's still really the focus for you,
Yeah.
is, how do I help connect, clients to their people? How do I help
Yeah. Yeah.
connect and grow? How do I help these entrepreneurs find the people that they get to help? And so the relationship building aspect of it, of course, that's what excites me about it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always have to be this space that I think we've kind of think about it now
Right. Right.
as about this
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
icky marketing tactic right now.
Yeah.
That's what
You,
people
you
think.
know, I think one of the biggest mistakes people have made when it comes to social media is they have made it just media
Mm,
instead of social media. And
mm,
what I mean by that is they've made it a platform where they just post, or they watch, and it's a very one-dimensional. It's
mm,
no different than the television. It's no different than the radio. But that was like the magic of social media. Like you could watch a video and then you could say hi to the person that made the video. You know what I mean? You can't do that on television. Although when I was a kid, I tried that. Like I'd watch people on TV. I was like, hey, hey. And, you know, it was like Sesame Street. They'd wave back, hey, little boy, how are you doing? And every once in a while, they're like, hey, Paul, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, they saw me. They see me. You know? And, but that's the reality. And that's the magic of social media is that you can post something and you can engage, you can be social on social media. But it has lost that in many regards because people just post or they just watch and there's no relationships that are built. Any media, any platform has the danger of evolving into something that it wasn't originally intended to be. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to build real relationships with people, real relationships with our customers, with our clients, with individuals that are connected to us. But you know, that takes more than just watching. That's giving and connecting and, you know, intentionally building those relationships.
No, and I think that too, that can become a skill where, you know, you have to practice it, right? Not just
Yeah,
online, but in
gotta
person.
be intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that in that understanding that that's a place for connection and also understanding that the ways that you can reach out to people and myself too, I'm guilty of this, you know, instead of thinking of it as like, oh gosh, I have to post something today because I haven't posted, you know, it's like
Yeah.
instead realizing like, no, why am I posting? Who am I
Right.
posting
Yeah.
for? What does that really look like? And then that's a whole different ballgame. You know, you're showing up for people differently that you're curating relationships with instead of just like, oh, I'm going to post some cute graphic because I know it's time.
Yeah. One of my mentors, I think everybody goes through this where maybe you're insecure about posting. You have this, oh, you know, I don't look good today, you know, my skin or whatever. Or you do a video and it's 100 takes, you stumble, you stutter, you do all that. And you're like, forget about it. I'm not going to do it. And I was guilty of doing that for a long time, that I was just like, I'm not going to do it. That was horrible. Or just, you know, today's not the day, I'll do it next week. I don't feel good. Don't look good and everything. One of my mentors told me, said, do you believe that your message can really help people and impact people? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, why are you allowing a bad hair day to keep you from getting that message out to people? Don't you think that's kind of selfish? And it was like, yeah. You know, if like I'm not serving people, I'm not putting my message out there that I really think can impact and help people because I have a bad hair day, then, you know, that's pretty selfish.
Yeah, no, I think that that's an important way to look at it. And it's so funny that you bring that up. When I was teaching my students when we first moved online, you know, before the pandemic and everything, I would do little videos for them where I was just like, hey, I'm in my house, or hey, here's what's
Yeah.
happening. And that's one of the things I told them is like, I was like, I can talk to you about human communication and relationships anywhere, no matter what I look like. So this is what
Yeah.
this is going to be. But it
Yeah.
was my understanding that I was okay showing up like that. And
Yeah.
so it's like kind of us getting out of our own way in terms
Right.
of like, oh, I have to show up in a certain way, or my reels have to look this way, or I have to present myself, or I need this aesthetic, or
Right.
whatever it is. And instead, just like you said, getting back to the why. Why did you want to show up in the first place? And the
Yeah.
majority of people in the entrepreneurial space started that because they wanted to help people, right? So
Yeah.
getting back to like that's how you're showing up, and helping people is not dependent on how cool your hair looks, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really not. But I think too, just reminding ourselves of that, and that's where it can get a little tricky for people too, is just we get caught up in this idea that we have to present ourselves in a certain way or be a certain persona or show up, you know, in this aesthetically pleasing grid or something, instead of remembering, you know, why we wanted to be in those spaces in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I do a challenge for my students when we're doing like a mastermind or something like that. Like, okay, do this, mess up your hair. And everybody messes up their hair and stuff. I was like, okay, now look really tired, like you just got out of bed, and they'll do that. I'm like, okay, now pull out your phone and go live. And everyone's like, you know, I'm like, that's the worst it can get. You've showed everybody your worst. Now everything else from that is just going to get better, you know. So
I love that. I love that. But you know what? That's the thing about it is sometimes everybody just needs permission to do that too. Like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Paul said I should do that. Okay, I'm going to do
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, just the evolution for you and how you've gone from that. Okay, I'm going to start here with these Facebook pages to what you do now because you're so prolific. You have a ton of clients, a big audience. What does that growth in that space look like for you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I work with some amazing people, A-list celebrities, Fortune 500 companies, some of the top entrepreneurs online. But it started out with ice cream shops, pizza shops, local realtors, and things like that. And but I really approach each client with sincerity, a level of excellence that is very results driven. That I think early on I probably made the mistakes of working with people that I wasn't the best fit for,
Mm,
because we all do that when we're trying to get started. Like, oh yeah, say yes to everybody, which can
yeah.
actually be dangerous.
Hmm.
But then I began to slowly evolve where I recognize, look, let me just focus on the people that I am really good at getting results for, that I know, like if they come to me, there's no like, maybe I can do it, maybe I can't. And so I began to really focus on that process of finding the people that I could get the best results for. And I remember I was working for a client over in Beverly Hills, and uh, he was doing events and stuff, and I was marketing for him. And I remember I went to his website, and he had a lot of celebrity friends. I was like, wow, this guy's very influential. And I remember I intentionally, I was like, I'm going to go over and beyond. I'm going to like really invest a lot into this relationship. And it was doing things like that kind of opened the door to people that he was connected to.
Hmm.
And so I did things like that. I remember there was an individual that we had connected to that was really, I guess you say he was connected in Hollywood. He wasn't anyone that a lot of people would know, but he was very well connected
Hmm.
in Hollywood. I remember I reached out to him and I said, hey, I want to take care of your marketing for you. And it was almost like he was bracing himself for some type of pitch, like, oh, what are you going to try to sell me? I was like, no, I'm not going to. I just want to, out of relationship, I want to do this for you. And I just began to do his marketing, began to get him results. And
Hmm.
when the timing was right, after I felt like I'd kind of invested in him, I said, hey, I see you're pretty connected with people. He's like, man, I'll do anything for you. Who you want me to introduce you to? And it was, because of that. And it wasn't anything that was quick. It was something that took, over a year of me investing in him. And I have many clients that grew from, hey, let me just serve, let me just help out, let me just invest in you. And now it's, I remember when I was leaving, I worked with Kevin Hart,
Hmm.
famous comedian, a lot of people know him. And one of the last messages he texted me when I left, he said, Paul, if there's anybody in Hollywood that you want to meet, just let me know. I'm like, somebody like that telling you and sending you a
Yeah.
message, that means a lot. That'll go a long way. So,
Mhm.
but it's, just um serving results, not just like, maybe it'll work, but results driven, and the results speak for themselves.
Hmm. Well, and there's so many wonderful things that you just said too, starting with the fact that you wanted to serve. You're like, I know I have something that I can help people, and you put yourself out there. That's the space where so many people, I think we do feel like, oh, I could help people do this, or I have an idea to do that, but then we stop ourselves from reaching
Yeah.
out, or we stop ourselves because we think, oh, somebody else is, oh, they're more important
Yeah.
than me, or they have more money than me, or they're too famous for me, or what have you. But just being able to really connect with people and be like, hey, I have something that might be able to work for you, or I know something
Yeah.
that might be able to help you. And allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that way and to just put yourself out there, make those connections, and understand that, like, if somebody doesn't respond back or says no, that it is not reflective of your worth. Like
Yeah.
that is something that it sounds like, oh, it's so easy. Oh, I just reached out to people. But I guarantee you, the number of people who are listening,
It's-
you're like, oh gosh, I could never do that. So
yeah. So, and
really, yeah.
I can tell you that there was a whole lot of messages that I sent that were left on red. You know what I mean? There was nobody responded. It went nowhere. But just if you send out 100 and one person
Mhm.
responds, then it could all be worth it.
Mhm. And I think too, then what you've really said here, but then also what I've seen from your work too is just you are leading with that, like not as a what can I get from this, but a hey, here are all the things I've learned. Here are the things that I know to be true, and here's how I think I can help you. And that's a different conversation.
It
That's
is.
like,
It is. Yeah.
yes, you're eventually selling your skills and services and things like that to people, but it's starting from a different place, right? You're fulfilling a need that somebody else has. And I think so often when we think about selling or in business, it gets achy for people
Very
too.
transactional. Very
Yeah,
transactional.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like really getting back to that space of remembering, like, why did you start doing this in the first place? What was really the goal, and what can you do for other people through that, through your
Yeah.
gifts and through your talents?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's uh yeah, like you said, business can be very transactional. It's like, I'll give you this, you give me this.
Mhm,
But there comes points in it where you you may just give,
mhm,
and you might not ever see anything in return.
mhm,
Obviously, I'm not talking about building a nonprofit where you're just giving and not receiving anything,
mhm.
but there has to be kind of this passion that leads your business that is going beyond, I can make money from this, because that
Right.
gets old quick. Once you start to figure out really how to make money, you've got that going. You'll get burnt out if the only thing that is motivating you is the next dollar, the next
Mhm,
paycheck and stuff. You'll get burnt out doing that. But when you have something bigger than that, when you have a mission, when you have a passion, when you have that desire to serve, to make, something better or to change, then that's something that will leave a legacy. That's something that you don't get
mhm.
burnt out doing, because it's got a bigger purpose.
Mhm. Well, and I think too, so often then when people step into those spaces, especially in an entrepreneurial space, it is hard not to get burnt out because people
Yeah.
just start and they want to run in every direction on all of the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind of advice, I guess, would you have for people who are like fully on board with what you're saying? They're like, yes, I want to serve, I want to help, but I got to do all the things, or I got to reach all the
Yeah.
people. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, you do have to have a mission, a purpose, a why that is bigger than what you're doing on a business aspect. Sometimes people have a passion and they're trying to make money on the passion, and it doesn't always align. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
know there's this misconception that people say, "Oh, just follow your passion and you'll be rich." That's not always true. I mean, that
Yeah.
that can be very discouraging, because you're like, "I'm following my passion, but I'm still broke."
I'm pausing this conversation to have a little moment of vulnerability with you. Do you love public speaking and wish you could get paid to do so? I've got the exact person that you need. I recently graduated from Jess Eckstrom's Mic Drop Academy. I was a little hesitant to sign up because I've paid for coaches and programs before that I didn't feel had the value there. But through speaking with Jess and her incredible team, I took a chance. Now I'm feeling so positive and confident that I'd love to share this opportunity with other people. If you've thought about getting paid to be a public speaker, or you long to do keynotes where you're telling your story in front of other audiences, I'll link the opportunity in the show notes. The doors won't be open for long, and I encourage you to check it out so you don't miss this opportunity. Now let's get back to this episode with Paul.
So sometimes you have to find something that generates money that you can, purchase your passion, that you can follow your passion in that. And so sometimes it's like, okay, i don't I don't always like this job or this business or what I'm doing, but I know that it's going to give me the liberty, the freedom,
Mhm.
the means to follow this passion in a greater way.
Mm,
So that's something you got to keep. I've got 3 kids, and I tell them, I said, you're lucky if you find. A lot of times, jobs is this. Okay, I don't really like the job, but I like the money. You know what I mean? It's like it gets paid good, so that'll keep me happy. Or then there's I really like the job. I really like what I'm doing, but I'm not getting paid that much. And so growing up, I know there was always that tug of war. Like, okay,
mm,
uh, I'm getting paid good, but I can't stand doing this. But I would tell myself it's good money. And then there'd be like, oh, I really love doing this, but I don't get paid anything. So you're really fortunate when the two can align, where you love what you're doing, you're getting compensated in the level that you feel you should be compensated. That's really a blessing to have that. So you have to have a balance in that. Sometimes it's not, oh, I really love the work, because there's days in everybody's job. I don't care how
Mhm.
much they love doing it. There's days and like, that was a bad day. Well, that's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Life is, regardless of what you're doing, you're gonna have bad days, but you just look at the big picture. And I've got a why, I've got a purpose, I've got a dream, I've got a mission that is going to. This is a vehicle that is going to draw me closer to that.
Mm-hmm. And I think, getting back to that why and that purpose, so often when we feel disgruntled or we dissatisfied or stuck or frustrated, it's because we've gotten away from that. It's because of
Yeah,
exactly what you're saying. We're like, okay, we're in a job and it's paying the bills, or we're providing for our family and we think that that's our role and what we have to do. And we become disconnected from our passion or our purpose, or what really does kind of light us up, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so even recognizing then though that sometimes we have to stay in roles where we are so we can pay our bills, so we can do
yeah,
those
yeah,
things. But then what are the other ways that we can connect to our passion or connect to our purpose? Because I agree with you too, that I think there's kind of been almost like a dangerous rhetoric, if you will, over
yeah,
the last several years of just like, oh, if you believe in it and you're passionate about it, then abundance is just going to come to you.
yeah, yeah. Not always true. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
it is true, but I remember I was sitting in a mastermind with a group of individuals, very high net worth individuals, executives, CEOs, business owners, inventors, and stuff. And we asked that question. It was like, okay, is it follow your passion and you'll be wealthy? And everybody on the panel there, they're like, how I made my money, I was not passionate about. It was like, I'm a CEO of pharmacy. I was no way passionate about pharmacy. Individuals that were inventors, they're like, I was not passionate about this, but they saw an opportunity
Mhm.
and they took advantage of that opportunity. So there was like opportunity, timing, and really passion wasn't even a part of the ingredient. Now, once they got into it and they started doing it, like, yeah, I'm passionate about it. I really enjoy doing this, but it wasn't something before they got into it that they were even interested in. So it's not always the passion.
Well, you just, I think, really spoke to something very big then for people too, is that, so many people, when they feel lost or feel stuck, it's because they're like, I don't know my passion, or I can't find it, or I don't know what I should
Yeah.
do. And so, if you let go of some of that pressure and
Yeah.
just allow yourself, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm passionate about right now, or maybe
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
thing I'm not passionate about, but let me just try this, or let me just do this for right now, or let me
Yeah.
see what happens even. Sometimes that has to be the space you're in too,
Yeah.
right? Because if you kind of take it the other direction, you're like, oh, I can't find my passion, or what's my purpose, and you're seeking and you're seeking and you're seeking, it's can be really defeating too,
Yeah. Yeah.
more defeating than if you're over here not looking for it, just waiting for things to kind of emerge and for you to see what you're passionate about. Because sometimes it's surprising, like you're saying, I bet some of those inventors or some of those thought leaders, they
Yeah.
didn't think that that's where they were going to end up, but through the process, they found something they were passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this, we all evolve, change, and go through different seasons in our life and everything like that. And so what you might be passionate about when you're in your 20s, probably going to be different than in your 30s, 40s, 50s. And so, to find like the holy grail, I'm passionate about this. Well, that might last for 5 years, 10 years. So don't, be disappointed in yourself or feel like you got to stick to that because you're, no longer passionate about it. Find something different, do
Right.
something different. There's no, disappointment in moving from something else to another, because you no longer have a passion in doing this.
Mhm. I think a lot of people felt that differently over the last few years with
I
the
think, yeah,
pandemic and with the,
yeah,
being at home and things. I think it was kind of an awakening for people of, yeah, where am I going with this? What am I doing? What no longer serves me? How do I want to step into things differently? And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure for you with your business too, that's kind of changed things as more people thought about becoming entrepreneurs. Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you, even in terms of people seeking your advice and your opinion on things? Do you feel like it's just cracked open a little bit more?
I do. I do think that a lot of people recognize that security is not always security.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, I've got a 9 to 5 job and everything's good, and I get my paycheck every week, and then something crazy happens, like what has happened, and it all changes.
Hmm.
And I've had situations in my life where I was working for other people and working for a company, and layoffs came,
Yeah.
and it's done. So yeah, you might have a 9 to 5 job and think that there's security, but is there really? I always tell people this, that a 9 to 5, and I'm not anti 9 to 5, like,
Right.
half my company that works for me, they're 9 to 5. So I appreciate, I respect, and I need people that really love the 9 to 5 security. But a lot of times with the 9 to 5 job, your traditional employment, is you've got this safety net. You've got this
Hmm.
safety net. So like, okay, I know that I'm going to get paid next week. I know this, but there's also a ceiling. There's also a ceiling, because regardless of how hard my team works, they're not getting my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, it's taken. This
Yeah.
CEO is taken. All right. You can work hard, but you got a ceiling. So a lot of jobs, you have this ceiling, but you have a safety net. But when it comes to the entrepreneurial life, you don't have a safety net. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe I'm going to get that contract next week. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to get a paycheck. Maybe I'm not. And so there's
Mhm.
there's no safety net. There's no, you know, nobody that's going to catch you when you fall. It's all on you. But there's also no ceiling. So the sky's the limit. However much you want to make, well, that's up to you. However, hard you can work and whatever you can create and do, the sky's the limit.
Mhm. And I think that that's something too, where just even understanding what that feels like for you and
Yeah.
allowing yourself flexibility to have that change, even for myself, for many years as a single mom, the idea of the stable paycheck and the 9 to 5, that was absolutely what made me feel secure.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
at the same time that I was like, wanted more money or thought I should make more money, it's exactly what you said. It was like the fear of not having that stability
Yeah.
won over my desire to like know that I could make
Scary.
more,
It's scary. Yeah.
and I think that that too is like recognizing for people like you don't have to choose and then stick with one thing the rest of
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There is an ebb and flow to it. There are different periods or spaces of your life where you might be like, this is what's working for me now, or this is the thing that I want to go after. But allowing yourself to kind of dream and have ideas about what that future and what those possibilities could look like, instead of thinking that whatever you choose when you're 20 or whatever it starts
Yeah.
for you
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like then you're destined to that path, or this is what I've chosen and now I'm stuck with it. And I think if anything over the last few years people have kind of woken up a little bit to that, in terms of
Yeah.
like, oh wait, there are other ways of looking at this, there are other ways of doing things, there are other possibilities. And even like you said, yes, you employ people for your 9 to 5, but I guarantee you, just based on who you are and your business, the 9 to 5 people who work for you, it's not like what a traditional company still looks like
Very
either,
true. Very
right?
true. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of, your trajectory and your growth, you're obviously a very busy person. You've built this amazing business for yourself. How have you kind of sustained yourself personally as you've gone through this? Obviously there's stress, there's trials, there's
Sure.
tribulations. What are some things that you do to really keep your mindset in the space where you need it to be, or to help yourself go forward when it is stressful?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I think there's a danger in relying on motivation.
Mm,
And
yes.
and what I mean, it's like, if you're an individual that has to continually be motivated, then entrepreneur life may not be for you, because it you don't always have someone behind you saying go go go. So there has to be more than motivation. You have to have discipline. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have discipline and structure that says, I don't feel like doing this. I'm not motivated. I'm tired. I'm going to stay in bed. But there's a discipline that overrides that feeling and says, I'm going to do it anyways. It's like I go to the gym every day, and there's a lot of days that I don't feel like going. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to go. And but I have people accountable. I have a personal trainer that says, I'm waiting for you. So I think it's important that you surround yourself with people that can hold you accountable, that can keep you disciplined, and you have a structure in your life that helps support that. And quite frankly, it's good to take a break every once in a while.
Yeah.
For a long time, I was 14, 16 hours a day, and I'm like, I'm not enjoying life, and it's I'm going to burn out really quick. So surrounding yourself with the right team, understanding that you can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Most of the things in my company that we do, I'm not the best at it. So, it's like we run ads, we build funnels, there's a lot of things that we do. I'm not the best at it, but I surround myself, and on my team, I have the best.
Yeah.
So, on a structural layout, I find myself, I manage managers instead of manage people. So
Mm-hmm.
I have people that manage, and I don't just hire people based upon their skill set,
Mm.
because a lot of things can be learned. So I
Yep.
try to hire people based upon, are they congruent with our mission, our value, our
Mhm.
team? Do they get our culture? And that's a lot. When someone gets our culture and they're fun to be around and they really connect with everybody, I can teach them to be better. But it's like, if a person's a jerk, I can't teach them how to be nice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, hey, this is how you not be a jerk. They don't understand that. You're speaking a different language to them.
Mhm.
So if a person, they connect with our culture and stuff, that makes leading a whole lot easier.
Mhm. Well, and that goes back to, I mean, of course, everything you say, I just hear about your ability to be a relationship builder and a connector. I mean, it's so evident to me that that's such a strong piece of who you are, is your ability to really foster those relationships and foster those connections for people. And so the fact that you're doing that with your own team and choosing to hire people who you can have those relationships with,
Yeah,
I think that that's a really good lesson for all of us. Is so often, we think, oh, I have to find the person who can do this or the person who can do that. But
right.
it's really like, no, find the person that you can get along with who can learn those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Because if you got someone that doesn't blend in, doesn't mold with the team, then it can be something that is just a contagious negative personality, and it can ruin the whole flow of things. But if a person isn't like, okay, an A+ at this skill set, well, I can teach them. I can have someone work with them, and they can grow from there. But
Mhm.
personality, if their personality, their attitude, things like that is not where it should be to begin with, and it's probably not going to change over time.
Mhm. Or you're going to spend so much energy and effort trying to change that at the expense
Yeah,
of your own personal happiness and well-being too.
yeah, yeah,
Right. No, that's a really good lesson to learn. And I love what you said about motivation, because I think that that's where a lot of us do get stuck, is we think like, oh, I should want to do that, or I don't feel like doing it. And
yeah,
there's so many reasons why we can get out of doing whatever we should be doing.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And so to just remind ourselves that not everything that we feel discomfort in is something we should avoid. There
absolutely.
are definitely things where it's like, oh, that doesn't make me feel comfortable, I better not do that. But a lot of times it's our brain just also telling us we shouldn't do something because we're comfortable. We're
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
space where it's just like, oh yeah, I don't want to get off the couch, so I don't feel like it. and
Comfort can be a blessing and a curse. It really can. It's like, oh, I'm so comfortable. I feel so good. But it's when businesses get comfortable, when entrepreneurs get comfortable, it can be a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah, it can be, because then you also stop losing sight of why you were pushing in the beginning, or why you were actually seeking to serve, right? And I think that that's something too where, we want to have that comfort because we want space for rest, or we
Yeah.
want to feel like we're not always fighting to claw to the top and things like that. So that's where also, like you said, making sure to build those spaces into your schedule too. Build in time for a rest, build in time for, or recognize there are going to be those moments where, okay, this is not a period where I'm getting after it every single day. This is a
Yeah.
period of reflection, or of looking back at where we, what we've done and where we need to go forward, and understanding that there's an ebb and flow to it too, instead
Yeah.
of like judging yourself so harshly that it has to look the same every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I think that every entrepreneur has a different DNA. I know some guys that if they're not if you're not working 80 hours a week, they're like, oh, you're lazy, and then there's other people's like 4-hour work week, baby. You know what I mean? So it is, some people, they thrive in that busy hustle, and that grind mentality. And if that's you, that's you. But um don't judge the person that is striving for the 4-hour work week.
Right, right. Just kind of, and I think that that's what can happen too in the entrepreneurial space or business space, is people, you see other people putting it out there how they do it, and then
Yeah.
somehow you think like, oh, I have to model it in this way, or this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
how I
yeah.
should do it, instead of exactly what you're saying, understanding that it is, a journey that you're going through, that
Yeah.
you have to figure out how you're going to work best. Not just like, oh, I love that person and they're my mentor, and
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
want to do it exactly like they do it. Okay, that's a surefire way to maybe not
No,
have things work
that's
out.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly, it's like going to a personal trainer or a nutritionist and he says, okay, this is what's going to work for you. And he gives the same plan to everybody.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. You have to look at a person's, you know, how their body responds to different things and their nutrition plan and everything like that. So yeah, in business, it can be the same thing. If someone says, okay, do this, this will work. Well, it may have worked for them, but that does not guarantee that it's going to work for you. So you got to kind of figure out what works best for you.
Okay, so I want to ask you kind of like a hot button question, if you will.
Okay.
Over the last, like, I've noticed it more within the last year, especially, and I'm sure you have as well, but the number of people who are like immediately make 6 and 7 figures, and this is
Uh-huh.
this online space for you, and everybody could be an online entrepreneur, and quit your job and go forward, and the money's just going to flow to you. What does that really look like in terms of your clients and the people that you work with in real life?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I think this. Um, the the clients that we work with typically at this point are achieving some level of success already, so they're above average already. And so it's a lot easier to take a person from, making $500,000 a year to take them to make $5 million a year.
Mhm.
Sounds like a
Mhm.
big jump, but it's a lot easier to take them versus a person that's making $10,000 a year to get them to 100,000.
Mhm.
And I've often thought about that, why that is. And
Mhm.
there's a couple reasons. Number one, their product or service has to be tested to the market. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Everybody comes to me like, oh, I got the next $1 million idea. And I'm like, oh, okay. Whoo, I've heard this before. And then they'll say something like this: nobody's doing this. This is gonna make us a lot of money. I'm like, well, there could be a reason why nobody is doing this. You know what I mean? So it's like, the things that they think are amazing, it doesn't always get me excited. So I think, the people that are already achieving that level of success, that they're making 6 figures, it's a lot easier to scale them than it is taking someone that is brand new, that hasn't untested, that has never done this. Uh, I'll say this: the people that are just getting started in internet marketing or online entrepreneur life, most people it doesn't work out for. I mean, that's unfortunate. Most people it doesn't work out for. And what I mean by that is most people it doesn't turn into a full-time career. And that is even working with the best of the best coaches, because there is a lot of mindset. There's a lot of psychological, there's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of skill sets that go beyond something that you just teach someone and they can read in a book. I've seen individuals that can make money online. You can give them the blueprint, they can do it, but the consistency of it's difficult for them because it is a lot of rejection. It is a lot of things. Like I can tell you this, things are going great, but in an average year, we can have countless failures, and things that we try and we do, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't I'm like, oh, I'm going to quit. I've learned that's part of the equation in getting better is that but there was a day that things like this would happen that I'm like, okay, maybe it's over. Maybe I'm done.
Yeah.
And so it took me many, many years to get past that. Like if something goes bad, I'm like, we'll figure it out. So most people it doesn't work for, and that's probably not anything all the gurus online are going to say. They're going to say, yeah, make 6 figures in 6 days, guaranteed. No, it's not. Yeah. That's the lottery.
Right. Honestly.
Yeah.
But I think that that's so important to really be transparent about, not that it's not possible for everyone, not that it isn't something that people can work for, but just to also recognize that that's the reality of it. It's putting the work in also. These things don't just magically happen for people. And I think unfortunately too, especially with all the stress and the strain that people have felt over the last few years, we want that. We want there to be this magic solution. We want there to be a guru or somebody here, take all my money and just make all this happen for me. And then I'm not going to have to think about it. So I really love the way that you're so transparent about yep, all these things can happen for you, but here are some of the steps that you're going to have to do to get there. Here are some of the here are some of the real factors that go into that, and really the transparency and the honesty that you put forth when you're speaking to that too. And I think that I don't know why we got into this space where talking about how hard you've worked is a negative thing, but because when you talk to really high thought leaders, when you talk to CEOs, executives, they've worked their asses off. None of them are oh yeah, it just happened for me. None of them.
Yeah.
So I think too, acknowledging that any dream worth having is something that you've probably put a little sweat equity into, and you've probably put some work into. That's not a bad thing to admit, no, I worked really hard to get here. And this is yes, there were steps and there were doors that opened, or I hired the right people or whatever it is. But the bottom line through all of that is back to what you're saying, your purpose, your desire, your drive, your motivation, because those are the things when the fancy people go away, or if the internet shut down for a day or whatever it is, you have to be able to draw back on that. Right. And so I think too, there's value in the conversation and admitting yep, this is going to take some work. It's going to take a little elbow grease, and you can get people who can be in your corner and help you. And then that's okay to admit that, right? Instead of thinking oh gosh, this is going to be easy, and if it's not, then I'm doing something wrong, or it's a failure within me, or it means I should quit. Instead, we can be more transparent about the fact that there are absolutely obstacles present in business and life and what have you. And so it's how we're going to move through those obstacles, instead of allowing that to be the thing that makes us, give up on our dreams or quit or whatever it is.
Exactly. I've had coaching students say to me, all right, if I invest in your coaching program, do you guarantee that I'm going to get X results? And I'll say, nope. And they're like, what? Why? You're trying to talk me out of? I'm anybody that says, yeah, we guarantee it, they're just saying it to take your money, because I can't guarantee. It's I'll go back to the personal trainer example. If I sign up for a personal trainer and he says, this is the results you're going to get, I'm like, well, can you guarantee I'm going to get those results? He cannot give me 100% guarantee, because if at 9:00 at night, I'm sitting there with a pint of ice cream, then that's not his fault. You know what I mean? If I don't show up and do the exercises he says to do, I'm not going to get the results he guaranteed. So coaching and a relationship like that, it's more than just the information that you receive, but it's about following the instruction, the consistency, and the action that you take too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I really just want to remind everyone who's listening to like all of these things, I know we're talking about it from a business sense, but everything you just said, that's so applicable to everything, right? Like understanding, like if you want a goal, if you want to have change in your life, it really is about what is the work that needs to happen to get there. And
Yeah.
that's something I know you work with clients, and in my work with clients too, they come all the time like, oh, I really want this. And I'm like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
What are
We
you
want
willing?
that for you too.
Yeah, I want that for you. So what are you willing to do to get that?
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
are you willing to do to get that? How much, what is that really? And being honest with yourself about that. Like you said,
Yeah.
okay, great. You want to be in shape. You have a personal trainer. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
Being honest with yourself. Are you going to get up at 5 a.m. every day? Or are you like, nope, that's not me? And really being clear for yourself on what all those things look like too. And I think that so often we again, we put our trust or our hope or our ideas in other people without first really narrowing down for ourselves, like, okay, but where am I in this? What is my
Yeah.
truth?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not a 5 a.m. workout person, but I like 5 p.m. So I'm going to do that. And that's going to
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah.
And that is something where that can be uncomfortable too. It sounds so silly, but what do you want from this, or what works best for you? And a lot of times we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, Paul, I'm so grateful that you took time to speak with me today. You have
Thank you
such
very
a
much.
wonderful presence, and just, I love the ways that, again, you encourage people to really not only go after what they want, but to show up for themselves every day to work for that. And you're just such a great inspiration in that sense.
Thank you very
So I'd
much.
love for you, obviously, I'll link it in the show notes and everything, but just give us
Sure.
a quick rundown of how we can find you, how people can work with you, what you have going on, upcoming.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So the easiest way is connect with me on Instagram. That's kind of like my primary platform. My Instagram handle is Paul, just Paul. Follow me there, send me a message. I always respond to all my messages that I receive on Instagram. And I'll give you a free copy of one of my books, digital copy
Awesome.
of one of my books. Just send me a message, say you heard me on this podcast, and I'll make sure you get that. And if you have any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to answer for you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time again to be here today. You have such a presence about you that's just inspiring. So even if people aren't into, they're not entrepreneurs or they're not in the online space, understanding just the motivation behind it, the ways that you can work toward your goals, and really just
Yeah.
having that attitude, I think is so important for all of us. And I just am really appreciative that you were able to be here today.
Thank you very much. It's been my privilege.
Here are a few takeaways from my conversation with Paul. Number one, if you find yourself frustrated with where you are currently and you're being hard on yourself for not being further ahead, take a pause and reflect on how far you've come. Give yourself credit for all the work you've done thus far. Number two, don't let a bad hair day prevent you from showing up and sharing a message or story that can impact or help others. Number three, if you come to your relationships with a sense of serving instead of asking, you'll create authentic connections. As Paul did, you may find it pays off for you in ways that you never thought possible. Number four, you may not become successful in doing something you're passionate about. You may see an opportunity to offer something that pays the bills, and along the way, you open yourself up to learning about new things that could ultimately become a passion for you. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you come back next week for another new episode. Have a great week.